Good morning, Campfire. Welcome to Low Code Campfire number 16. And, I know you're all here because I've promised to tell you about reproduction. So Dale has an odd sense of humor every now and then. So anyway, good morning. This is a weekly gathering, all skill levels welcome, but it's all about low code enthusiasm in general, Plant an App in specific. We have lots and lots of videos. What are we on today? 15, 16, so 15 hours of videos. We are very informal if anybody is new, and I don't think we have any new people, but jump in, talk. If you got noise, please mute. We have a link here for questions and topics. It was largely, it confused. Mark gave me a suggestion that it needed to be more like a suggestion box instead of a feedback box. So when you use this link, it at least says now that it's also for suggestions. But we love suggestions and feedback, and we also get those by email as well. Is there anybody new joining today? Let's see, participants. It's the same crew, okay. And I guess I can rename myself. We've been talking about Capterra reviews, and the link that I put up last week was expired, so we've got a new one. We're up to, I think, 7 reviews, and it's we were targeting minimum of 10. So if you can help us with that, that'd be great. Beyond that, it's probably good to jump out there and take a look at Capterra for Plant an App, because you can see the reviews that others have done. We sure appreciate the effort that people put in there. And beyond that, I'll say hello, good morning, and what do you got going on?
Good morning, Dale.
Hey.
Morning, everyone.
Anybody have anything burning, or do you want me to jump into the questions submitted? Okay, well, we got, you act like you're going to talk, Mark. What do you got?
Nothing burning.
Okay. All right. So we got a quick question, and it came in, this is by email, but it was a quick question for Reza, but even I can answer this one. And this was about tokens be called from Razor script within workflows. And this was by somebody, I think he's in a time zone that he pays attention to this, but he can't attend because it's like the middle of the night. We're sorry about that. But if I did this at 2 in the morning, it wouldn't be very good for anybody. So interestingly, in Low Code Cafe recently, this was number 56, Radu talked about this quite a bit, and the answer is yes, and he shows exactly how to do it. And so he spent a lot of time in here in Razor tokens, but in this 15 minutes worth of topic did that. So I'll make sure to include the link for this in the chat, and when I post this on YouTube, let's see if I can remember. Okay, I'm hitting share with the time code, so we'll put that in there. And I'm also going to put it in my links so that I don't forget about it. So there's that one, and chat. Did anybody see Rado do that? He was going and quite excited about it, being able to do tokens within tokens. All right. So now, Mark, you didn't get it to sit out long. This was your question, talking about a scenario about trying to do a read user action and having to probably to use load user in order to do something else within Plant an App. And so your question was about advice for creating and using users that have the right amount of permissions. So let's see, the idea here is that users that use your application, they might have a particular role and can do things according to the permissions on the entity, but you might need to let them do something in a controlled way, perhaps under code, that you're going to let them do something that is kind of above their pay grade, above their roles. And how do we do that? So probably the easiest question is the one to answer at the end. Does it matter if you use if you use a user that has more permissions than is needed? So I think no, it doesn't matter if you use more permissions than necessary. Your only problem from a is it going to work standpoint is if you use less permissions, which that's pretty, I guess, self-explanatory. But I think the idea here is this is somebody who you're doing a load user on. If you have, it's only going to happen, right? The scenario is only going to happen in code. So you're going to use load user in code to elevate yourself for a period of time and then get away. So the person who has the right to write the code has the right to elevate practically to any level. And for me, from a practical standpoint, I just designate a user and use that one over and over again. And I often, well, for example, I may define that in a token within tokens so that it can change if you need it to. But so that if you use it throughout your application, you use the same token for the elevated or high permission user, at least you can extract that out. It's also, if you're doing it to share code to share with somebody else, which I think I did with my pusher code, I put the elevated user in a token, and that way you can define it right for your system. But
Dale, can I just mention a couple things?
Please do. You've had time.
I was going to just add in that so when you use the the load user within a workflow, that it's within the scope of that workflow, so you can load the user and you don't necessarily need to reload another user, because unless something changes within the workflow that you need the other user, the existing user for. But if you're working within a form or something like that, it's a good idea to do the load user and then to save your current user to a variable, a token, and then to reload that user back into the context. But after you've done the action that you need the elevated user for. But within a workflow, it's within that scope, so it's okay to let that go. But the other thing I wanted to mention specifically about the read user that, Mark, I don't know if you're aware or not, but we recently added a feature to the read user action that allows you to override that built-in security, so that you can so that you don't need to do the load user action when you're using specifically the read user action. And Linda or Reza, maybe you can help me out here. It's the built-in, the built-in ones that had the security issue. We now have that the override built-in security drop down within those actions.
Yeah, Patrick, that's good to know. I didn't know that you'd relaxed that on that particular action.
Yeah, on the permissions of the entity, you'll see I think it's an all users or something like that. And
yeah, there's that option also, yeah. But Reza, I was talking about within the read user action that we have that override built-in security option.
Yeah, you've got a couple of choices there, definitely.
Okay, but the follow-up question would then be, assuming the scenario where we did load a user that had more permissions in order to do some fancy thing we're doing, if the rest of the actions in that workflow operate now under that user, is there a chance at all that a malicious user can sneak into that action list or modify an action that's in further down in the list?
Not really, because it's in your control, right? When these workflows are built, right, and they're, you know, I'm going to loosely use the term compiled, right? They're all self-contained, and especially if someone doesn't know the inner workings of them, like no one's going to slip in and do something. I think, you know, just maybe where we were going, or where my brain was going with this, is only maybe a little bit downside to this is, let's say you read some stuff up front, and then ultimately you're wanting to update some records, right? You fetch some data out of other places. That's what you need this load user and read for, to get some information. Now you've got them in context tokens or whatever. And now you're down the stream in your workflow and you're like, go update this record or insert a record here. It's going to end up looking like that load user is the one that did it. So a couple of things you could do is also pass into your workflow the current user ID that like pushed the button on the form. And then you can always switch back out to another load user action and put that one in. Or if it's part of like, so if it's the built-in actions, it's going to operate under the load user, right? So you can always just be like, hey, now that I've done the couple of reads, do another load user and have it be the one that actually pushed the button that I passed in. And you can put it back into that context. Or if you're doing SQL or other things, you have that ID. You know, maybe it's another workflow you're calling that's logging something, you know, of who did this or whatever. Well, then just pass that user in. So you kind of juggle there, you know. But
I would think that would be a good idea to do anytime I loaded a user with more permissions than the one that was using the app, because that, you know, if my workflow was attempting to do something that that user ordinarily wouldn't be allowed to do, and I had loaded a user with more permissions, and I wasn't monitoring the, you know, the subsequent actions, then things might happen that that user should not have been able to do. So if I just re-put the original user back in right after the action that needed the advanced permissions, that seems like that would be a good logical way to handle
That is the
it.
safest route to take. Absolutely. Yeah. Wrap that the action that you need the elevated user for with the load user actions to load the user and then load the actual user back in.
And back out. Okay.
you can also protect, you know, like say it's the button that's going to call this powerful workflow. You know, you still have your roles and different options to protect and validate that they're allowed to push that button. And you'll even notice the built-in forms kind of do that on pre-init and different things, kind of saying from this viewpoint in the front end, should you even be here? Should you see this? Should it be enabled? So you got one layer of protection there to even expose the ability to kick the workflow off. So you've kind of validated or protected there. And a lot of that stuff really is server side. It's not like it's client side JavaScript, you know, like that's why you might want to be careful with a show or bind or something that's just on JavaScript, and actually put it on the enable conditionally, or, you know, that sort of the actions that are, or the settings that are defined on a button or that sort of place. But once you've said, okay, you can see this, you can push it, then once you're in your workflow, you know, you already know that they should have been allowed to run this workflow, and you can put that extra protection like we're talking about in there. So you kind of double up your triple up, even if you need. It just depends on what's happening there, you know.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
And just making sure I understand within the context of a workflow. Reza, you mentioned passing in the user ID. If it's a like an action form calling a workflow, you have access to user ID as it comes in, right? So depending on how it's used, you will have a user ID that you could use temporarily. You just have to remember to set it aside, because once you load user, now the user token is the one you loaded it to. If you don't save it, you don't know where to go back to. So you can either pass it in or save it in context. Now, is there a case where we wouldn't have a context user? Yeah, like if an API called a workflow and the API was unrestricted, you might not have a user context yet, right? So there could be cases where you don't have a user. You might have to check for that if your workflow could if you're using a scenario like that, a non-user scenario, you might have to check for it.
Right. And Dale, you reminded me of a question that I have had in the past. You know, on the scenario of passing in a user ID from an action form where we know we have access to that user ID, if we change it around, if we entered the workflow without passing that in, can the workflow, can I use the token to grab the user ID right in the middle of the workflow?
No, because the workflow is running server side on the back end, and it inherently has no real, once it's kind of running like that in the back end, it doesn't know about who called it on the front end and things like that.
I wondered about that.
Okay, I think that's what I was asking about anyway. So that's, but maybe this gets into our next topic. I think we've beaten that one a little bit. Let's go on to, you know, I said reproducing issues, and I strongly suspect that I'm talking to the choir on this one. You guys probably all understand this. I did want to record it though anyway, because it might be of help to other people that kind of how do we deal with issues when they come up within the product. And so I'll just tell you, you know, if I don't know the answer to the question that you guys are presenting when a support case comes in, I go into reproduction mode. I try to build the simplest case on a page that's not, you know, in my case, I have a website devoted to these, but for you, you might do it as create a separate page and try to focus only on the feature that you're dealing with. Part of the confusion that often happens is you're trying to build a system that you know, that's quite complex, and you're trying to use one of our features, and in that you know, big setup, in that context, it may be hard to isolate, well, what's it doing, why isn't it working the way I want it to? So and then, you know, for me, I have the question from you, but not the big scope of what you're trying to do. So I'm kind of forced to focus in on it. But from a technique standpoint, you know, this is, I mean, this is kind of a way to approach something. Let's reproduce it in the simplest way possible, just using just what we have to understand what the thing is doing, and then go from there. Sometimes that reveals that we have, you know, exactly how things are running, and so we know how to work with them within the project. Sometimes it results in, hey, it's not working right, and then you know, we pass that on as a product, as a bug, whatever. But by isolating it, that's what we do. So again, in my case, what I do is I have a website that's dedicated to this, and I just break it out by month. As support goes, we just, you know, there's more and more of these that come along. But I typically just add a page to my site for the particular question that we're dealing with. So in this case, I'm curious, I want to demonstrate what's going on with workflows and user IDs. So this, I'm going to say Campfire 16 user ID as the name of my page, and I like to use Page Builder, and then I just add that to the site. And then typically, you know, on this HTML that comes up, I'll put in exactly what I'm trying to do, so that when I come back and look at it on another day, you probably don't need this, but so you know, what I want to know is what user ID do I have when I'm working on a workflow. And so I'm going to go into configuration. I'm going to open this in a new tab, and I'm going to build a demonstration workflow. So this is a new workflow. It's going to, I'm going to put it in my, let's see, I do have a Campfire workspace, and I'm going to call this Campfire 16 user ID. I have a start, I have an end, and I'm going to do an output, which is user ID, and I'm going to pass out your user ID. So when I save and test this and run it, I get a user ID of 14. So I must be logged in as user ID 14. So going back to my test, I'm going to drop an action form and just the simplest form of what we can do. Okay, come on. Oh, it did. It dropped it on there. I didn't see that. All right, so we'll do a blank form. I am going to add only a button with an action to run. We're going to do actually, I'm going to put a field, a text field, and this is going to be my user ID, and with initial value of user. So we'll see where we are when we start, and then another one. Workflow there. And so the button is going to be execute that and get the user ID, and we're going to put it into workflow. And we'll also do Ajax to keep it from refreshing. And so we have a very isolated case. And let's take a look at what we have. So we have user ID 14. We click the button and we get back 14. So from a form, the workflow knows that your user ID, it knows it inherently, right? We didn't do any actions. We only have an input, no process, and an output. So we're outputting the user ID. If we add a load user in here, and try and elevate to some other user, I'm going to just identifier 1. And I'm also going to output, this will be fun. So if we test this, we see that we're getting back, because we're elevating, we're getting back user 1 and the name of that user. If we false this out so it doesn't run, then we're just going to get me, user 14, and my user ID. So we'll put this back in. And save and test. Okay. So back to our form. We'll add another text box. This is going to be for name or button. And look at the output. We have this, so we can output that as well. So I am user 14, but in the context of that, we've demonstrated that we can load up a completely different user, and the user has the username. So now, final test, if we, let's see, if we save on our way in, So we set it. Whatever comes into us, then we can use this to set it back. So we can load, we know that this load user has elevated for a period of time, and then we'll load user again and restore back to user ID we saved on the way in. So now when we save and test, it elevates it, but also puts it back where we came from. And so if we submit on this one, it puts it back. All right, so that's what I do with reproduction. I create the simplest possible case that I can, and then work it forward. And so for anyone who's trying to struggle through an issue with the product, I recommend create a page, get away from the thing that you were trying to do in the big picture, and just focus in on the area where you're having the problem, whether it's a form or a listing or whatever it was. Try and express it in the simplest form, and then leave some tracks as to what it was doing. In my case, I'm displaying it on screen. I'm also save and testing the workflow and outputting information, but you can also use things like putting things into the error log, or using a display on an action form to see what all the variables were. We talked a lot about debugging last week, so there's all those options. So action form brings the user context into the workflow, but other things are not going to. Again, I know APIs that are executed that don't use JWT, for example. If those were to call workflow, I think it would come in as empty. Any of that of value? Any of that make any sense? Cool. Any other suggestions? Any other best practices that you guys use when you're debugging that might fall into the reproduction discussion? Okay. What else do we have? I had a reserved question about Search Boost, and we can talk a little bit about Search Boost, but nobody else has anything going on?
No, I was a little late to the party, Dale, and we can do Search Boost next. And I don't know if you covered this already, but if you wanted to show the thing you found yesterday about how to have themes applied based on.
Yeah, that was a good one. If anybody, that was a great question that came in through the community forum, and we found I mean, it's kind of one of those, you look down and you've been wearing the Ruby slippers all along, but within site settings, and I haven't tested this, I just found it. No, wrong one here. Yeah, site settings, maybe. Nope. Yeah, site settings, site aliases. There's a theme that you can select. And if we go into edit mode on any alias, you can choose the theme that gets associated, theme and default container, I believe, that gets associated with that alias. So if you're running a site that you want it to look slightly different or completely different, depending on where they came from, if you want to have the same information but themed different ways, and I've certainly seen websites that do this, then this feature is going to automatically apply it. We kind of figured there must have been something like this, because there is the override that you can apply through the URL, but now this is going to allow you to apply a different one depending on what alias you come in on. Everybody already know that, and I was the only one.
I was thinking of you there, Ben.
Yeah, I didn't know that was in there specifically for that. So when Dale posted that, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that was in there.
Yep. So like I say, I haven't had a chance to test it. I'd love it if you know, if you do end up, or if anyone ends up getting into it and testing that out and replying back. Actually, you know, it was Reza that told me, well, go do a Google search on that. And I started looking around and I saw that on an Evoke page, and I was pleased to jump into the community product and find that it's built in there. It's not just an Evoke feature. In that, it occurs to me to kind of tell you a little bit about our support cycle. The support team gets together with the product team every Thursday at 9:30 Central Time, and so Reza and I and our teams talk about all the issues that are coming up, and so oftentimes, if you have a not emergency issue, you'll see that your answers are going to come back Thursday morning or afternoon after we've had a chance to talk and figure out what's the next step on your issue. But knowing that we have that timing, you might time your questions. Schedule all your emergencies for early Thursday, I guess is what I'm saying, so that we can talk about them. Anyway. All right, Roberto, I see that you jumped in. Was it not you that put me on to Adalo in one of these sessions not that long ago? If you're there, I'm just saying I'm digging into Adalo, and that's going to be my topic for next week on our low code cafe, just how low code plays well with other low code, and so being able to use Plantain app to talk to a product that builds low code. Mark, you and I talked about this some yesterday, and after that, I took a look, and there's no question it is is it a progressive web app? Is that what they're called, PWA? Yeah, it is building a PWA. That's the easiest thing that Adalo does. And so that's what we'll be covering. And I don't think they do have a disconnected scenario yet. So I don't know that it's humongous. What I'm going to demonstrate is too much more advantageous than Mark's been doing some development on building progressive web apps. He's been learning a lot and may present to us sometime in the future about what he's learned, but Adalo isn't necessarily any better in terms of having an offline interaction. It is going to be a nice demonstration, though, about how we can, like I say, play nicely. But we've got low code on our side, developing APIs, lickety split, consuming them, and doing things through them on something that looks very much like a native app, or could actually be a native app on your mobile device. So, Roberto, thanks for pointing me towards Adalo. And if you ever want to talk about what it is that you're doing with Adalo, I'd love to hear more about that. Okay, you guys are quiet today. I'm going to move on to Search Boost. Who uses Search Boost? Who has never touched it? Okay. All right. So I had never touched it as a developer before joining Plantain app and focusing on forms and grids and data and displaying information and really not too much about information, but especially in a support role, you find people who are using Search Boost, and it's like the core of what they do. We have some big, whether it's government entities or educational entities, they've got all these resources. They've got PDFs, they've got files, they've got pages, they've got the data within within the Plantain app data tables or other data tables, and to be able to use Search Boost to come up with all of those is really quite handy. So again, I've just kind of as mentioned for, you know, I do a bunch of these tests, and I always, when I'm doing the reproductions, I always put, you know, the question that came in, where it came from, things like this. So I'm starting to build up a lot of pages about where, about each individual test and where they came from. So this one came from question ID 1527. This was, you know, so we had a question about reposting data, and that came from the community forum as well. And so I've turned on Search Boost on the site, and I haven't tested this today, so let's see if I get into trouble. But Search Boost is turned on, and I say repost, and it shows me exactly, very quickly, what page has that information to it, and I can jump to it. So if I'm looking for something, I can get it right to it. If I'm looking for a case number or something else, something that involves, let's say, checkboxes. And here's all my different cases having to do with checkbox. So I can just kind of jump down to them very quickly. So Search Boost helps find that. And it's very interactive, very fast, uses Lucene index. I think it's similar to, if not the same thing as what Google does or used to do, but very quick. And so it's just about turning it on and configuring it and figuring out what you want it to do. So in Plantain app, it's a built-in thing. It's down here on search, and it's just a case of turning it on. The opening administrative screen shows you what's in the index. And I say the index, there really can be multiple indexes. And you can, so for example, if you're a government site and you want to give some people access to all the things about regulations, you can create a search behavior that only indexes things having to do with regulations. You can create a separate search behavior for everything having to do with housing or mobile homes, and completely so that when somebody does a search, they're only jumping in, they're only considering the things that fall within that index. So that's, anyway. So by default, we just have one behavior activated that's called site search. I have a different behavior that's available here called items search, and we'll take a look at that one. So when I look at the items search, we have it's got a different definition here, and I'll show you the differences in the definition. But when we were, this has only 40, that has only Plantain app indexer entities, and it's only, it doesn't have any pages, any files, any databases that are visible. So the search, and you can test a search. So and now I've got to go back. I've got items as part of this. Let's see how it's set up. So the search boxes that are, one thing that there is what search boxes are connected to this. Where on your site is somebody doing, having access to the items search? And this currently is not connected to anything. It's a search behavior I've set up, and the only way to search on it is by doing a test search here in the administrative screen. Where's the data coming from? That's content sources. So we have, within our portal, we have no pages selected. It's not getting any data from any pages. It's not looking in any folders on the file system. And so, and it's not getting any data from the database indexing rules. Let's see, I gotta remember, oh, so in all of this, it's not, we're not adding any file types, we don't have any URLs. There's so many different sources that you can select from, but we're not selecting any of them in this case. So where are we setting it? If we go to entities and look at items, oops, and we look at the configuration of items, it's turned on. This enable indexing has said that everything that's in this table is going to get added to the index. And if I don't know, we can go back and take a look and see if we have any other items turned on. So here we have one. We have some billings that are not part of the search boost indexing, but if we look at books, they are part of the search boost indexing. So let's see how that manifests. If we look at, I'm going to bring up books in my list, and I have some things here, some book titles, and so if I were to go search on that, and let's just jump over here into so because wooden toys, because the books table is indexed, when I do a search for one of those titles, it's going to come up and show it. And notice that it's built a URL that has, it's a dynamic search book ID. So if I click that, it's going to take me to a Plant and App detail page that has wooden toys built into it. So you could just with that selection to say index, yes, it turns that on for search boost right there. So let's maybe demonstrate when it's no. So billings was no. If we take a look at billings and see what we have here, well, we have SSE. I don't know, maybe that's good. This isn't very good. Well, we have partial. Let's see what partial shows up on our list here. So we'll do a search for, I would expect that, yeah, we're not going to get any results. If we turn on indexing for that table, in theory, it would find that. So let's demonstrate that. I'm willing to take a chance. So first, we're going to turn this on, enable indexing. And then second of all, search takes place kind of in the background. It's it might take 10 minutes or so. It might take longer. I'm going to try and, well, this won't. So we have 40, notice we have 40 total Plant and App entities that are indexed so far. It hasn't, that was the number it was there before. What I'm going to do is, there's a clear index. We'll zero everything out here. So we're going to force it to reindex everything now, hopefully, so that it's going to show that the search is working. So I'm going to hit index, and it's letting us know it's going to take a while, and we can start seeing it work. And so you'll see this interactivity. It shows how many jobs are going. And then as the jobs get processed, these numbers will jump. And you can see already that the indexer entities jumped to 41. It got through the Plant and App indexer entities job. And so that one extra record that we turned on is there. So now it's going through pages and files and other database entries. And after a while, it'll finish. We should be able to do a test search, though, already on partial. And it's not, I don't know whether that, oh, so then now there's, but wait, there's more. If we go back to entities and take a look at billing and look at our properties, searchable comes into play. So we didn't tell it that it's only searching the things that are listed there. So I'm going to click everything here. And when we redo this, that's going to change the content that's in the file that gets indexed. So I'm going to go back to search now, and this job is still running. I'm going to cancel the job and restart it. Clear the index. And so we're at 0 again and redo it. So when you're, this is the kind of thing that is very easy to do on a on a low volume site, but the more pages, the more volume. Indexing could take a long time. Probably far better to just let it do on a production site. You're not going to want to redo these indexes, or it might be hours. You let it do its thing. So now let's see if we have a better result here. And lo and behold, it did find it, and we can click in on it, and it takes us right to this thing. So that's Plant and App entities. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So let's keep going on that. other things that are available. If we, let's see, I'm gonna go back to the search interface, and let's see, the jobs are counting down. There's still 62 more jobs. If we knew what files were out there, we could probably search for, let's take a look at site search behavior. This one is a lot more involved. Earlier we're looking at items, which was only showing Plant and App Indexer, but now we're looking at the whole thing. So let's, on this behavior, site in, what is it called? Site search. This one is connected to all these different search boxes. And so, like the search box that appears at the top of the screen, search boxes I've dropped on various pages, and this is their item name from settings, so you can make these be more useful. But all these search boxes use that particular behavior. But for the sources, where is it getting its information? It's getting it from, well, all the pages are checked, and all the pages all the way down are checked. So this gives us all the content that's on all the various pages. And let's see. We're not doing any database indexing. We can talk about that one in a second, or URLs, but we are doing documents. And if we look at documents, we're getting all PDF and Word documents. We could, if we wanted to do Excel documents, we can activate those, PowerPoint, plain text, HTML. So you can activate more types of content, and that just says it's going to be looking for those extensions in your file system to index them. Okay, so that's file types. And then, you can what is this option? I don't know if I know this one. URLs is another thing. If you can index external sites for particular purposes. So, for example, if I wanted to index another site, a different site, you can point it to a different page or a sitemap or an RSS feed, and it would index that and include it. Let's see if we can demonstrate that. I'm sure NASA. NASA breaking news, RSS. So there's all of NASA breaking news. So I'm going to go to my items search so we don't have to wait quite so long in between, and configure this external URL that we're going to go to this RSS site. And what do we want? We want the title, and the title is going to be description. And what else do we want to map? Let's see if there's a date, any of this. Okay, description is the longer thing and item. So let's map item and description. So we'll do, this is actually here for description, and title is going to be item. And so we'll just map those two things and save the changes. It knows that we've made a change and it's offering to reindex, so we'll let it reindex and go back to the top and watch what it does. So we should see our 41 entities here, and I wonder what happened to our URLs. Try one more time. Anybody see what I did wrong? Maybe I forgot to add it. Oh, it's there.
Maybe it's the, yeah, I was going to say the boost.
We don't have any exceptions. Okay, I've done it before, and I'm not going to. I'll test it. We can see. We'll just search NASA. So obviously, there's lots I don't know about this product, but you can include RSS feeds and URLs if you know what you're doing. Does it make you feel better when I can't make it work? You can remove things. You can make exceptions on things that you don't want to be there. There's some settings that you, let's see, you can set the template and the way that the search box looks. But the search settings, these are, I think this is the one. Yeah, this one's kind of interesting. So you can turn on fuzzy search. There's wildcard search. So with wildcard disabled, you're looking for a particular word. With it enabled, you can use an asterisk to represent a part of a word, or if you turn it on implicitly, then a search for one thing, you know, that begins with, you're going to find all the words that begin with that kind of thing. So that's a nice option. You can tailor how does this act? Is it for multi-words? Any of the words, exact words, all the words. There's another one down here, stemming. So for English, searches, searching, searched become identical. It knows the English rules for words, and so it helps make that possible so that if you're looking for the word searching, it'll actually bring up search and searches as well. So then kind of one of the areas where we're working now, where we know we have some issues, there are some items within some selections that you can make within Search Boost to say that are not compatible. So turning on stemming together with implicit wildcard, which we were talking about a second ago, actually doesn't give the results that you would hope it would. There's some back-end reasons, indexing reasons why that doesn't make sense. And so we're kind of we're heading down path of turning off things that are incompatible so that, or at least warning you, hey, this isn't going to work the way you wished it would work. There's stop words that if there are words that you're just going to ignore from indexing, those can be dropped out. And then along the way, this is useful to know that in advanced settings, there's things you can, for example, log what users are searching for, and also log the indexing. So you can start to see, if you were to look at the debug logs, and we covered debug logs last week pretty extensively, if you were to enable this and take a look, let an indexing cycle happen, you might see why a particular content was indexed or excluded, because you can see it being considered, and then what decisions were made, or if there were any errors that were involved. Questions about Search Boost? What can you do with it?
My advice
Buzz,
is,
have you seen any cool cases that you want to mention?
yeah, I mean, several. I know that, like, just from a database standpoint, we have a pretty major client that only uses the product for Search Boost, and they've got like a bunch of really big Oracle databases, like terabytes of data that they're using to kind of bring it all into one spot that they can search against and stuff. It is really fast. It's powerful. My advice is, don't be scared. Play. Make you a different context for a search and play around. One cool thing I've done with it, or that I've seen that it can do, is the file searching, and it can search within files in PDFs and PowerPoints and Excels and things like that. And then the templates for the output. So one way I've used it in the past, I used to have like a grid, right? And it's got a lot of users and things. As that list of users in this app got really big, like 10,000, even though I was using the list layout, like I was trying to basically do one of those as you type and it starts giving you like, oh, are you looking for this user? And it's got like a nice little card looking view type thing, and you can then pick them and it would load up their profile. It was taking a really long time to initialize that and search. And so you kind of touched on it. You can make these templates for it and make a profile that would just search that table, and then you can bring it back to look however you want, and you throw just that module on the page, and as people search, it's very fast kind of to help you find whatever. So that would be like for me, that was like a game changer. It's lightning fast once it's indexed. And I know there are some clients that rely very heavily on it. And like Dale mentioned, it's there in the product, kind of out of the box. And if you turn on the enable indexing on your entities, by default it's off, but it will index them. And it's a real good way to try it out and test it out. And maybe you want it on, maybe you don't want it on for certain ones, but you can kind of get a feel and control what it looks like for making it very easy to find things. And the community portal is using it heavily. And that's how, when you're searching and stuff like that, it'll show you like where words come in and different stuff. But play with, it is a bit intimidating, even for me or any of us, the developers, like who works on it product. There's only a couple people on the team that know it really, really well and deep. But what I've seen, whether you're using it, being a developer on it, it's one of those like just because it has so many configurations and features to it and stuff, just play it, adjust, tweak, hit reindex, and see what it does. You're not really going to hurt anything, especially if you go and make yourself a new search context or whatever, the profile thing up there. So you don't have to mess with like the built-in one. Make one like it, and then just play, and you'll get a feel pretty quick for what it can do. It's a very, very powerful product.
Been several people that are chatting here about whether it's only for DNN search, or does it know how to interact with Google, and no follow. So I don't think it doesn't interact with. You can load. I think you could load content. You could probably force it through that URL thing to load some things with Google, but not like get a combined answer. So that I think you can do that. But Jim Everett, you said something about patch skins, being stuck on patch skins. I think we've seen that before. Can you comment at all?
Yeah, I've tried it on a couple of sites we've got set up, and
I think your audio is challenged. I've seen this before. Yeah. Not in Plant an App. That okay, see, we have patch skins, unpatched skins. And so is it the case where it's coming up with that patch skins button and you can't get beyond it.
No, that's all I'm getting is the patch skins dialogue. I get nothing else. Just that's the only thing on the screen.
Okay. I've seen it before and I don't remember what the solution to that is. Rather, do you happen to remember that one? If not, I'd suggest let's enter it as a ticket, and I'll be happy to set up a time to just meet with you, Jim, and we'll see if we can sort out how to get there.
That's cool.
Sure. There was a question about results be returned to another site by API. I'm almost certain that the answer to that is yes. On our DNN Sharp, I'm pretty sure that this content is actually somewhere else. And so as I'm starting to type, it's getting the answers from elsewhere. And so it can, but I haven't actually set it up that way. So might need a little bit of research. Help for constructing Boolean and complex queries. I've seen syntax challenging. Well, and those, I don't know about, that's a great question. Let's see if we have anything on that. So I'll take that one as an offline thing. We're getting to be past time here, but the answer is I don't know. I will say there's as you start searching through the documentation, there's run in web farm. So again, some of these very big entities have multiple servers and load balancers, and this can be configured to be very fast on a large number of servers. And so there's lots of things that you can do with it. And I'll also mention this is one of the products that will survive our product retreat. Search Boost will be available separately even after March 31st of 2022, as will Action Form. The other ones are the ones subject of that. All right, last call. Any final questions or comments for your host? All right, I have, thanks, Jim. I'll grab that screenshot before we go away here so that not to spear on me. I'll take a look at that.
If I could just interrupt for 1 second. Sorry, this has nothing to do. This is just to Reza. When you get a chance, Reza, can you check your chat?
Oh, sure. Once the meeting ends, I don't see it.
Yeah, I'll leave the meeting up till you say you got it there. But regardless, we're glad that you joined us. I hope that we've provided something of value along the way here today, and we will see you again next Friday. Thanks, everyone.